Cisco SecureX, orchestration, phishing use case. So we all know that phishing is a burden, especially on security operations team. There's a lot of things that they need to do when they're doing the analysis of any phishing attempt. And so we want technologies to mitigate that as much as possible. And there's lots of technologies that provide that. Cisco email security capabilities has a lot of things that are focused around phishing to help mitigate the risk. We've also got things like advanced phishing protection that, again, will add an additional layer around phishing techniques. You might even have your email offering that has some capabilities inherently built in. So regardless of the technologies that you have in place, nothing's going to be 100% effective. And so that's where this comes in. This is where we leverage the human element, right? We educate our users to look for things that suggest that the email itself might be a phishing attempt, as an example. And we get them to forward off any email that they believe is suspect. Now, they can do that as an attachment. This is the exercise we're going to go through here. Or they could use a button, again, sending it as an attachment that's built into the Outlook client, as an example. And so when we go through this, what the goal here is really to eliminate a lot of the human elements from a security operations perspective and have this all automated. So let's walk through this. So the first thing we're going to do is validate the email and instantiate the workflow. So here's our email. It comes in. I'm the user. I forward it off to a specific email address. Again, this could be a button within a client itself, as an example. And this workflow is automatically going to get started. And so we're going to fetch the global variables within SecureX, and we're going to set the environment and region it's running in. Then we'll go ahead and validate the email meets the requirements. If it does not, so in this case, we're looking for an attachment, then we're going to send notification. And in this case, it's going to be a rejection. So the user knows that this did not meet the requirements. This is why. And it'll end the workflow for you. If it is yes, then we're going to acknowledge receipt and continue. So again, we're going to send notification to the user to say, look, we've got this. It's going through and being processed. Here's some advice. Again, this is all configurable. Please delete the email after you have submitted it for investigation, as an example. And then we'll go ahead and continue. And now we get into the meat of it, right? We've got this attachment. We're going to loop through each attachment. We're going to check what type of file this is. So if it's other, meaning not email, we're going to determine the verdict for the observations. If the disposition itself comes back as unknown, then obviously we're going to want to analyze it. If it comes back with a disposition, so the answer to that is no, meaning we have an existing disposition for that observable, then we're going to update the table with the disposition information. And so the table is going to be used to empower the SOC team. And we'll go ahead and continue. If the disposition comes back as unknown, meaning there's no disposition currently in play, we're going to then potentially submit this to ThreatGrid. But first, we're going to determine if the file type is supported. If it's not supported, we're going to update the table again with an unsupported type, empowering the SOC team. If it is supported, we're going to go ahead and send that to ThreatGrid for analysis. We're going to extract the threat score. We're going to update the table with disposition, and then we'll continue. If it's email, we're going to extract the observables from the email itself. We'll determine the verdict for each observable. If this is a URL, and any URLs that we analyze and have a top level of 2 characters, we suspect that is a shortened URL, and we do some additional analysis. We look for the redirect and we analyze from there. But that'll be submitted if it's a URL to ThreatGrid. Again, if the observable is a URL, or if the observable is not a URL, so the answer is no to is it a URL, then we're going to update the disposition. So if it's yes, we're going to go ahead and submit and then update the table. If it's no, we just update the table. And then we go ahead and continue. Now we get into create a threat response casebook and incident. So results suspicious? No, we'll go ahead and continue. If it's yes, now we'll go ahead and start this process, right? We'll create a threat response casebook. We'll create a threat response incident. We'll create a threat response relationship and then a threat response citing. And so this is what it looks like. So this is the threat response relationship elements. You can see here that I can very quickly pivot into Cisco threat response and then go ahead and view that information in the relations graph. And then this is a threat response incident that's created. And again, you can look at the observables, the timeline, the sightings, right? You create the threat response citing, right? And so we can go ahead and pivot through that and create our incident from here and start working on that case. Okay, let's send the notification to SOC. So we'll go ahead and check to see if there's a WebEx Teams room provided. If yes, we're going to post that message in WebEx Teams. That message is going to look like this. So a little bit about what it is. So it contains malicious or suspicious content, the email subject, the sender, the recipient, the number of attachments, and then you've got actions. And actions is going to allow us now to investigate and threat response. So all we do is click that and it'll go ahead and bring it to that visual that we saw on the previous slide around the relations graph. And then we can obviously look at the incident with that second tab here, right here, and we click that and we're going to get a nice an incident that's been created in threat response, and we can go ahead and have the team engage in that process. If it's no, and in either scenario, we're going to send an email notification to the SOC. So what that looks like is this. So again, reported by, here's the links for the incident and the investigation. And then you've got some details here around who it was sent, the sender. And look here, observable internetbadguys.com. There's the domain. The disposition was malicious. So initially, when we looked at that hyperlink in that email that was originally sent, that was what it was pointing to. It was pointing to this malicious domain here. And we can see here we've got a clean disposition on some of the other elements. And then we'll go ahead and continue. And so finally we go, is there anything suspicious? So what was the outcome? The outcome itself had something so suspicious or malicious. We're going to send an update via email to the user, and we're telling them that it was found malicious. Please do not open a message and delete it immediately, etc. Right? And that's if they failed to delete it originally when they submitted it. Again, these are customizable. You might want to work through what flow you want. And you know what? The sky's the limit, right? Again, you can take an existing workflow and massage it and build your own. Maybe you want some auto remediation here as well. And then you would end the workflow. If there's nothing suspicious, again, a message goes out to the user to let them know that it's safe. I didn't include an example here. But pretty cool, right? This is something that's free. It's part of the SecureX orchestration workflow. You can go ahead and get that information from GitHub. I'll have it in the comments. Yeah, check it out. But what I wanted to do was very quickly show you a couple of things. So this is the Teams room. This is SOC notification phishing. Here's your, the submission here, your sender, your recipients, and then here's my hyperlinks, right? So I can very quickly jump into the threat response or the incident themselves. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that down, and very quickly you can see there's my visual, right? So that's a lot of human element that I've completely automated. And so when I go ahead and have it in Cisco Threat Response, remember, these are all those different modules that I've added here. And so what it's done is it's went out and looked at that information of internetbadguys.com as an example here, and it might also show me other assets that have been compromised by going to that particular domain. And so now the incident, it looks a little bit different from that just a harmless maybe, or what seemed to be harmless email, but the user was smart enough to pick up some identifiers that it was suspect. They forwarded it off, and now it's ran through this complete automated process, and the analyst is looking at that going, we've got a bigger problem here, right? So maybe some users didn't forward it off, right? You would never know. but one user did, and now I know there's many other users that may have been compromised here and that actually have communicated with that domain. Again, you can do your analysis here, dig into it a little bit deeper, add additional observations, etc. And here's the incident. So we got a nice little title here. It says tax calculation is ready, phishing investigation. I have a nice summary here showing one malicious. Here's my observations. I can also pivot and make decisions here, right? I could, for example, run an additional playbook. I've got some other elements that are here. I've got my timeline. I've got my sightings. I also have any linked references here. I could assign myself to the case. All of that has been done for you using SecureX phishing use case. Really, really cool workflow. You got to check it out.